Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, it is my pleasure to be interviewing Edward Goeke and his experience in transforming his health on a carnivore diet. Hi, Edward. Thank you so much for accepting my invite. Can you share a little bit about your story and what brought you to a carnivore diet?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on, Sarah. I meant to say this before the recording, but I actually have been I was introduced to your videos. I came across your videos years ago, so it's actually kind of a surreal experience. So,
Oh,
because I used
wow.
to watch you before. Yeah, yeah.
I love it.
Um, just before I get into it, I do want to say that I will try and keep this as brief as possible, but it is necessarily going to be long because my story is quite lengthy. So I hope that that's okay.
That's okay.
Warning for you and the viewers. So, basically, my story starts when I was 16 years old. I was freshly 16, and I was in my second hour strength class. I remember having strength in the morning, and I was weightlifting, and it was just like any other day. I got done. I was a little fatigued, and I went to my third hour chemistry class, and it's a very warm room. Sat down, and since I'm fatigued and it's really warm and cozy in there, I started to fall asleep. But there was a problem that happened. While I was dozing off, I felt this butterfly sensation in my stomach. Everyone knows what that feels like, the anxiety that you feel whenever you encounter something like a threat or something that your mind perceives as a threat. You get that feeling in your stomach. But for some reason, I was having it unsolicitedly. It wasn't actually being elicited from me as it should be. It was just randomly occurring. I just had the feeling, but it didn't correspond to any perceived threat. And
How old were
if
you
you
at that age?
I was 16. So
Got
this was I was 16 years old when it was
Okay.
happening. And what ended up happening was I had that feeling in my stomach, and I actually got fearful of it because there was no reason for me to experience it, which caused this feedback loop where I got more scared, which caused the feeling to get worse because then there actually was a reason. And it was just this whole thing. It spiraled into my first panic attack, though. I didn't actually know what one felt like. I had to leave the room. I went to the bathroom to like cool off for a minute. And it actually, I was picked up by my parents. I thought I was sick or something. I had never experienced something like that before. And it took some further reflection for me to realize that it actually was a panic attack. I thought that was a metaphor when people said that. It actually is a real thing, and I didn't know that until I had actually experienced it. So I thought it was a fluke. I went to my room. I was just chilling out like usual, and I thought that everything was going to go back to normal, but it never did. I usually what I say is little did I know how much it actually sucks to have your life fall apart. How much I didn't know how that feels. It turned into a regular thing. Every time I went to school, I was having this. It turned into every time I was waking up to go to school, I was having pot symptoms where I would stand up and have really bad high blood pressure, really bad, um, mainly tachycardia more than high blood pressure. It was a very fast heart rate to the point where my basal heart rate, standing at least, was about 130 BPM probably,
Whoa.
and it would not come down. Um,
Wow.
it was real. The only reason I know that number is because I used to obsess over my. I'm a huge music guy, and so I know BPMs, and I was just like,
Me too.
yeah, I'd recognize when my heart rate was matching a song I was listening to, and it was like 132 was the song I was listening to, I think, and I was like, and I realized it was steadily at that rate, like 130. I was standing up, and it would not come down. But every time that I stood up, not only would I just have tachycardia, it was a response to those butterflies in my stomach. Every time I stood up, I was having that feeling in my stomach. And that feeling in my stomach, finally, it worsened to the point where I developed a symptom that most doctors, every single one that I've talked to, they've never heard of this before. They've never seen this before. But it was basically the symptom where any time that I would experience any emotion, whether it be subtle or extreme, or whether it be positive or negative, it would cause crippling, debilitating pain in my stomach to the point where I would keel over in pain and have to sit down. At least sit down. Usually, in order to get complete alleviation of that pain, I'd have to lie down on my back. And I didn't know what was going on. It was extremely scary. It got to the point where I couldn't watch any TV because you're feeling emotion when you're watching a show. I couldn't have conversations with people. I couldn't listen to music, ironically enough. Now I mentioned that earlier. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't go to school because, well, I mean, any sort of stimulation that would elicit a response, an emotional response from me, that without this condition, I otherwise wouldn't have noticed because, we take those for granted. I couldn't be exposed to those. I couldn't be involved in that. And so I was missing 4 out of 5 days of school, basically. I was really behind. And, at the time, since I didn't know what was going on, but I also, at the same time, since I was young, I didn't really think to consider that it may have been because of what I was eating or something like that. I was more upset about the fact that I was missing out with my friends than actually experiencing these issues, and that was just delayed maturation a little bit. It was a lack of maturity that was causing that. But I mean, I eventually did start to recognize the severity of this whenever it was getting to the point where I was lying on the ground from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed, not just looking up the ceiling, not able to do anything, and not even able to make my own food for myself. So during this time period, I did get a job during the lockdowns, actually, because I was told by many of my friends and family, since they couldn't see any apparent issues with me physically on the outside, externally, that it must be in my head. We went to the doctor. We went to the hospital a few times. I was put on topical testosterone gel because we thought maybe it was a hormonal dysregulation issue because my dad they say that he has a genetic predisposition to low testosterone. So we were like, well, he developed those symptoms at 18. I'm 16. Maybe that's what's going on. So I was actually on topical TRT. I was on 2 acid reflux medications because I was saying that I had chest pain with the heart stuff. So they thought, well, we'll put you on some acid reflux medications. I was on all this stuff, including propranolol, which is a blood pressure medication, particularly for my heart rate, which had the greatest effect. But what that was doing was it was still my tachycardia and my panic attacks were, or I'm sorry, my panic attacks were still persisting, but just without high blood pressure and tachycardia happening alongside it. It was a really weird feeling. I'd be freaking out, but my heart rate would be like 80. So it had an effect, but it didn't have the effect of fixing the underlying issue because there's something going on, and it was mainly in my abdomen. It was stemming from my abdomen going all the way throughout my body, messing with my neurology. So as much as I was on those medications, since it didn't fix anything, many of my friends, but also some of my family members who I'm on good terms with now, but it was a tumultuous time period back then because they told me directly that it was in my head. And not only that, I was told by one in particular that they've dealt with this before. So it was like, because it was anxiety. They've dealt with anxiety before, and all anxiety is the same. And so So I was like, okay, well, if anyone that is listening actually understands what it's like to be told that, over time, they probably also understand, I would suspect, that they understand that it ends up being the case that you're told that enough, you start to actually sort of believe it. So what ended up happening was I forced myself to go to school. I told myself consciously, it is in your head. They're probably right. Well, subconsciously, I still knew, something was not right. But consciously, I just started to sort of indoctrinate myself into believing that everything was fine. So I forced myself to go to school. I forced myself to get a job during the lockdowns. I was actually sort of forced. It was the other way around. I was forced to get a job. That's a long story. But ironically, I got one during the lockdowns, and it was just it was at a job that was supposed to be leisurely. It was at Walmart. But I had a position that was a little more taxing than other positions. So I slowly was just whittling myself down. I worked there for a year, and then I went to Target, and just for better pay at the time. And I thought, oh, it was going to be an easier job. The damage was already done because in January of 2022, everything went downhill. I had to go on leave for work because I turned my head one direction and I saw black for like a full second. Like I was completely blind for a full second. I haven't had any instance of that again, but I did have that. And I was like, well, this is really bad. So I went on leave for work. I was panicking about it because I was like, this really is getting worse. I don't know what's going on with me. I have no idea what's going on with me. So I go on leave for work, and I thought it was just going to be a 2 week thing, just, get better. And no, it didn't get better. I lost the little tiny amount of muscle mass that I even had because of working. So it seemed to have made everything worse. And for 4 months straight, I was not able to even see my family. I was staying at my dad's house because I couldn't move between houses. I couldn't move at all. I was lying down on the ground waiting for him to get home from work to make me food. Like I couldn't make the food for myself. I couldn't get water for myself. I couldn't walk anywhere around the house myself. And at this point, I'm like, what is going on with me? I mean, throughout the last few years, I've been trying to figure out, hey, you know, what could possibly be going on with me? Like, these are my symptoms, Google, tell me what's going on. And I couldn't find anything at all. I would always think that I'd found something and then it never worked. So eventually, and this will tie into diet eventually, it's just since my story is so dense, I have to break it up a little bit. Um, what ended up happening was I did find out, I found a post while I was scrolling on Instagram, just like desperate for answers. I had at the time started following all these health pages and stuff, and I did find a post from a certain admin on Instagram that it was about vagus nerve inflammation. And it was listing off all the symptoms that could correspond with that. And most of those symptoms were what I was going through, like an exact fit to what I was going through. And I was like, wow, okay, so it's one thing to talk about vagus nerve inflammation, but what can cause vagus nerve inflammation? It doesn't just happen spontaneously out of nowhere, right? Well, I came across a few things, but I came across one in particular, which was a condition called CCI, craniocervical instability. Now, for people that don't know what that is, basically instability, wherever it is characterized by an instability of the ligaments, which are what hold bone to bone, in the body. So if you have an instability of the ligaments because they're either weak, there's lack of collagen build up there, or not build up, but rather, incorporated into the structures of the ligaments, then they can become loose and it could cause the bones to move around too much. And what do we mean by too much? Usually that's about, I don't know, a few millimeters or even 1 millimeter, depending on who you are. And those bones can start impinging upon surrounding nerves and arteries if that happens. So CCI is instability of the ligaments that are in the cervical spine, so your neck, leading up to the cranium. And so that can cause vagus nerve inflammation because your vagus nerves are, they run right down here. They actually stem throughout the whole body,
Right.
but they start right
The
at the
two
brainstem.
main big highways go, yeah, from your brain down, and you have one on each side.
Yeah, yeah. And they serve different functions, sort of like the left one seems to be more involved in different things than the right one. But I think hopefully I'm not switching those around. But either way, I found out about that and I was led to a YouTube page actually by the name of Caring Medical Florida. And it's a clinic that it's actually based in Fort Myers, Florida, that has a YouTube channel that talks about structural conditions. They talk about hypermobile EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which, I have that, and I'm going to get to how I was diagnosed with that in the first place. But it's deeply tied into that. But they have a YouTube channel where they bring awareness to all these things. There was a vagus nerve. It was called vagopathy seminar. The main physician there that employs the treatments that is actually regenerative to the point where it fixes the condition entirely over time, which I will also get into. He is the one that coined that term, sort of vagopathy. And it was a 2-hour seminar. And I watched the whole thing, and I was so convinced that I had this condition that I actually called them to schedule an appointment with them without even telling my dad or anybody. I was going to tell them afterwards and be like, "Hey, by the way, I have this appointment." So, and that's exactly what I did. And I told my dad about it, and he was the most supportive during my journey at the time. And he was like, at the time he was going into debt, paying for all these medical bills to try and like figure out what was going on because he knew something was wrong. And he was like, "Yeah, no, I mean, we're both desperate, so." And so on April 6th, we finally, it was a 2-month waiting period. We finally drove down there. Fortunately, I had my grandmother who lives an hour and a half away from the clinic. She randomly bought a house there. She didn't even know why she did it. She tells me this all the time. If she hadn't bought that house, I probably wouldn't be here today because I wouldn't have been able to get any treatments because I wouldn't have had a place to stay. So it was very fortunate that she actually had bought a house for ostensibly no reason, but we drove there, 14, 15 hours straight through one, trip. And on April 8th, we drove to the clinic to get diagnostic testing done. And since this is a private clinic, there was some high tech stuff there. It was really stuff I'd never seen before, like a cone beam CT scan they were doing on me. They were doing a DMX, digital motion X-ray. So it's an X-ray, but it's a live X-ray. You move your head around, you can see all of the different areas. Yeah, so it's really important when you're trying to diagnose something like instability because it depends on the position you're in, whether it'll be shown up on an X-ray. So they did all this stuff on me, and I remember when Dr. Hauser, the main doctor there, walked in to talk to me about the scans, on the big screen in there, they'll show you all your scans. He said to me, he goes, if you had come any later, you were on your way for something catastrophic. Like you're in the top 10% probably of cases we've seen. And that was just with looking at my neck. So clearly, I mean, I got a confirmed diagnosis with it, something that I had known for a long time deep down. It was relieving. So again, if anyone here is watching that has gone through really like a chronic health condition, you'll probably understand that if you finally get a diagnosis after years of not knowing what's going on, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. It's a relieving. It is a relief to finally know what's going on with you so that you actually can approach a game plan, in terms of trying to fix the issue. So we immediately started to undergo treatments. What were those treatments? They employ a mixture of something that some people may have heard of before, PRP, platelet-rich plasma injections, but also prolotherapy, which is very similar, but it's a solution of water, dextrose, a plant compound that promotes inflammation. And as I always say, leave it to plants to do such a thing, right? But also a slight numbing agent, I believe. I hope I'm getting that right. But the first three ingredients are the primary ones. And what it involves is they take the syringe and they put it into the injured area. And so in this case, it would be my ligaments, and they would inject those, and it stimulates your own inflammatory pathways to heal the area. So it is the most holistic, I guess you could say, approach as you can get for healing this condition. Since ligaments don't have good blood supply as compared to like muscles, you kind of need to jumpstart the body to heal a ligament if it's injured. They don't heal fully on their own oftentimes, most of the time actually. They don't fully heal. So even the needle itself, whenever it touches the ligament, can stimulate healing on the area a lot of times, even without the solution. But PRP is the same thing, except they take your blood and they basically, to simplify, they concentrate the healing elements out of it by spinning your blood twice, and then they put it in the syringe, and then they do the same thing. PRP, in my experience, has been more effective. But they are a clinic that will, in one treatment, I mean, I've done this many times, they will employ over 100 injections at once. They can do as many as you need and as many as you're willing to pay for. And so that is what I needed, because a lot of clinics will do like one or two. And if that were the case with me, I probably wouldn't, again, wouldn't be doing what I'm doing at least today, because it would have taken a long time for me to heal as much as I, did. So long story short, I know it's really ironic me saying that after I've been talking for this long, but they did end up diagnosing me with hypermobile EDS effectively. I technically failed the diagnosis because when they did the tests, it doesn't affect my vascular system, as it often does in Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, because your blood vessels are lined with collagen. And since it's a collagen disorder, it oftentimes affects your vascular system. So I passed every test in terms of the physical structures, like how bendy and flexible I am, but not the vascular part. It was the only part that I failed. And so they said, well, technically we can't classify you as HEDS, right? But they said, they're like, they gave me the silent, like, yeah, we still treat you as one of our severe EDS patients. So I always want to clarify that. I don't want people to think I'm like lying or anything like that. I say that I have EDS because in effect I do. So it affected my whole body. So if people want to know why I had those emotional symptoms, it's because my ribs were so unstable. They're so unstable that every single time I was experiencing an emotion and my diaphragm would flex, it was pulling my ribs in a way that would impinge on all of my surrounding nerves. And all of your fight or flight nerves are around in your thoracic cavity, your solar plexus. And so I was like, that makes a lot of sense. That makes sense why whenever I lie down on the ground and put my arms up above my head, it'll fix the issues. I won't feel those issues. So anyway, how does this tie into diet? Because I know that people are probably, they're listening. They're like, okay, so how does this tie into carnivore and everything? Well, again, I was trying to break this up into chunks. So let's go back just one time. If you go back before I even started working at Target, or actually right around the time I was starting to work at Target, I finally came to the conclusion. I don't know why it took me so long. It's probably because as kids in my generation, at least, we're not taught this stuff. We're not taught to focus on our diet. You can basically eat through anything and not gain a pound oftentimes. At least with me, that's how it was. So I didn't care about my diet. I would come home from school and I would eat an entire box of like that granola cereal. It's like entire box and I'd be fine. Or an entire box of wheat thins, not gain a pound. And I'd think, of course, if I'm not gaining weight, then I'm also healthy necessarily, because that's the only criterion of health apparently. But anyway, I didn't think about it ever, but I thought, well, what if that's what's causing my issue? I was desperate at the time, so I'm shuffling through any possibility. And one day I go downstairs It was one night, and I decided to eat a bunch of cereal and like a bunch of grain-based snacks. It was normal. I just did it out of boredom a lot of times. Well, immediately after I ate it, and by immediately, I mean about 2 minutes, not even really, after I ate the food, like finished eating, all of my muscle twitching that often happened, that would be associated with all these areas of pain, was just, it acted up everywhere. All of my, it went like nerve tingling, started acting up. And I was like, what is going on? Like, wow, am I right about this? Like, is diet affecting my condition or something? Like, whatever I have, if not causing it. So I remember actually being ecstatic for the same reasons that I told you that I was ecstatic about the diagnosis I got. It's the same reason. I was like, oh, I finally have a lead. So I ran upstairs to the loft of the house, and I looked up, laughing while I was looking it up because I sort of thought it was stupid, but I went, "Are grains bad for you?" Because I thought that was the main common denominator with everything that I had eaten. And I'm laughing, and then I click search, and there's a website that pops up from CrossFitImpulse.com or something, and it says why grains are killing you. I went, hold on a minute. Okay, let me read this. Let me read this. So I start reading it, and that's when I learned about lectins and phytates. I went, oh my gosh. So as soon as, given the fact that I had no lead ever, I was like, okay, you know what? It must be this that's causing everything. A lot of times that's what we do. We hyperfixate on the issue. So we're like, that must be what's causing everything
That's the
to go
cure.
wrong. Exactly. That is the cure. I finally found it. So I did. I went ahead and I started looking into like, okay, fine. Grains have lectins and phytates in them, so I'm not going to eat any grains anymore. But it sort of got me into like paleo, because paleo is like a grain-free type thing. And I started doing paleo, and I was like, well, this isn't working. Like I feel very slightly better to the point of really no change. I was like, what's going on? Well, eventually, I reached out to some of the people I was following on the holistic health space on Instagram, and I was like, I'm kind of desperate here. What do you think is going on? Do you think that I should do paleo? Do you think it should be more restrictive? Am I missing something? And someone had said, try the Whole30 diet. It's a little more strict. You're removing legumes and you're removing, I think, dairy. And dairy's one.
Right. It's
So,
like autoimmune paleo, basically.
yeah, yeah. And so I heard about that as she told me about it, and I went, okay. So I started eating that, and I felt even better. I will admit, I felt even better. But I went, still something. Like I was getting heat flashes still, and I didn't really know why. I didn't know what they were. It was after I ate. Like it was like after I ate, I would have these heat flashes. And I was like, well, what's going on? Well, then I had an aha moment. I had like a duh moment. I was like, Eddie, these foods are not the only foods with lectins and phytates in them. Like, let's look into. So I was still hyperfixated on lectins and phytates, but I was like, there's more foods here. And that's what got me to come across Dr. Stephen Gundry, which some of you guys may know, who hyperfixates on
Yeah.
lectins.
Yeah.
So then I adopted his diet. So you can see that I'm going through like every diet possible. So paleo first, Whole30, check, done. Okay. Next is the lectin-free Dr. Gundry diet. And I'll tell you what, I felt even better than all the other diets on that, but I still didn't feel the best. In fact, I was actually getting emaciated because I wasn't eating enough protein.
Right.
Dr. Gundry stresses the abstention of protein in the diet. In fact, he's actually said word for word, no more than 10 to 20 grams of protein per day, no matter who you are, to eat. And it also doesn't matter what type of protein you're consuming.
Ooh,
He said that. That was one of the things he said.
really?
Yes.
Is that
Uh,
recent?
that was from about 2, 3 years ago, probably.
I have to follow
And
up on that, see if he updated his stance on that.
yeah. So, well, his reasoning was your body recycles a lot of protein. In fact, your gut lining does. But it was like, how much of it does it recycle? Does it recycle enough for your needs? And because if we recycled everything, we wouldn't need to eat any protein, right? So, but anyway,
Right.
there was a lot of things that were better, and there were a lot of things that were worse. Anytime that I did have animal protein, it was pasture raised. He does stress that. So I was like, oh, better fatty acid profile. There were some good things, and I give the benefit of the doubt, and I give credit where credit is due. So it wasn't the worst thing that I could have been doing.
I agree. I
Um,
mean, I really got into carnivore because I read Stephen Gundry's book. So from
exactly. Me too.
him,
I read his book.
isn't it ironic that all the carnivores really started, I feel, with Stephen Gundry? And then we were like, that's interesting. And then Sean Baker's on Joe Rogan and then Paul Saladino. And it was like that.
Uh-huh. That's actually, yep, and that's how this is gonna go. This diet evolution thing is gonna go.
Right.
For months I was on his diet and I felt better, but I was just like, I was getting, my mom was actually worried for me. She was like, I'm glad you're into the health stuff, but you need to put some meat on your bones. And you
And
know,
he recommends the beans and the legumes. I'm assuming you did not do that part of it.
yeah, so no, he says since beans and legumes have lectins in them, he actually discourages the consumption
Okay.
of those
But
things.
he's
Yeah.
like, pressure cook them, it's fine in a little bit,
Pressure
but
cook. Yeah, he says
yeah,
if you want to have them, pressure cook them. Same thing with like he talks about white rice or sorry, rice in general. If you pressure cook it, you can get rid of a lot of lectins, but you can't get rid of other things, which he's correct on as well. Like you can't get rid of a lot of oxalic acid in plants
right.
by
So
pressure cooking them.
what was the exact meal plan that you were following? If it's like exactly what he's saying.
So it's a lot of resistant starch. He focuses a lot on resistant starch, prebiotic fiber type stuff. So sweet potatoes. Later down the line, I was eating a lot of cassava root because whenever I was staying in Florida, there was a lot of that in the stores,
Yeah.
which apparently has a lot of cyanide in them. So that's cool. Like microdosing cyanide with eating. I was eating like an entire cassava root a night. So
That's
that was a lot.
funny.
Um,
I had a student when I was teaching at Miami-Dade College. She told me a lot of Miami students, they come from Cuba. And so I had a lot of Cubans taking my nutrition courses. And so one of them
yeah,
told
yeah.
me, yeah, her grandma back in Cuba, she boiled cassava and instead of throwing away the boiled water, gave it to her pig and the pig died.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
Because I was talking about
That's not a
lectins and
good
cyanide
sign.
and all that good. No.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's actually that's really interesting. I mean, thankfully that didn't happen to me, and it doesn't
Good.
happen to other people eating them. But I was, yeah, no, it was a lot. Like I was eating an entire cassava root. I was dipping it in like olive oil and Frank's Red Hot because olive oil is like the best thing to eat, right?
Right.
And anything that has vinegar in it for short chain fatty acids and stuff like that, like a butyric acid. Like I was listening, I was adhering a lot to this, and I didn't. It kind of sucked at the time because I didn't really have a community because I was so young. Most people that are following this stuff and they're really into the health space, they're older because they've had enough time to develop conditions. I was really young, so I was like 18 years old, and I'm like, I'm reading all these books about this stuff, but I can't find anyone else my age that even cares that much. So I felt like very isolated, but I did it anyway. I of course, because I mean, if you get desperate enough, you're gonna do that stuff. I was eating a lot of avocados. I was eating a lot of onions. Again, anything that was like prebiotic fiber. I was using coconut flour, almond flour for everything. I bought his polyphenol complexes, Dr. Gundry's stuff. Like I bought every single one, and I was drinking them. I was having LMNT packets as well. I'm trying to figure out like a lot of chocolate, a lot of dark chocolate. I was
Wow.
actually eating
Very
the
plant heavy.
yep. I was actually eating the baking bar of chocolate. Like I grew accustomed to eating the straight chocolate. I remember giving it to my friend one time and he was like, dude, that he had to spit it out and he was like, man, when you start drinking like vodka, you'll have no problem with that. It's so like bitter. And I was like, yeah, well, but that's basically what I was eating for like every day. Every day. I did have some eggs, pastured eggs, like 4 eggs a day. I was having 4 eggs a day and I was having eventually I upped it to about half a pound to a pound of ground beef as well a day. So I was eating all of that. So I was eating a lot of food.
Huh.
But that was probably what got me like that was really helpful for me, especially when I was undergoing these treatments. Because yeah, that I was on that diet all the way through the beginning of my treatment.
Okay.
And so since I wasn't able to do anything, I was starting to scroll and I was like, well, I'm coming across these pages. Like I started coming across Dave Asprey more often. Um, and he stressed more animal protein consumption as opposed to Dr. Gundry. He basically agreed with Dr. Gundry on everything except that. He was like, you should eat more animal products. So I was like, let's say Dr. Gundry's right. I'm an anomaly. I'm undergoing actual structural regeneration, so I probably should have protein anyway. Like I'm different uh, in terms of my circumstances. So I had more of that. And then I came across Paul Saladino more often. And I already did, but I actually actively followed him because I liked to laugh at his content at the time. I was like, oh, let's see what he's posted now. And I was like, man, you can't like I thought his diet was the worst diet ever because of how much fruit and meat was in it. I was under the impression that red meat was bad at that much of a concentration or quantity, and also fruit because of the sugar. So I thought every single thing he was eating was bad, right? But then I was listening to him more and I was like, oh, maybe he has a point. So I did eventually in June of 2022. Yeah. I adopted his meat and fruit diet, and that lasted a month. I'm sorry, it was July then. If it was a month, it was in July. It was a month because it was the only time that I ever ate a diet where after I ate the meals in the diet, I would start sweating, my face would get super red, my blood pressure would go up, and my heart rate would go up. I couldn't handle it. I was like every single time I would eat, I was having these swings, these blood pressure swings, and it would like reach a point where it was almost like I was having a panic attack, but I wasn't. Like it was just I was sweating, heart was racing, and then it would come down a little after that, and then it would go up again, but not as severe, and then it would come back down again. And I felt really inflamed. I didn't feel good. The only thing that I was doing that he didn't promote was I was eating, I think, a really small sweet potato at the time still. Even though he actually says that that's a safer option than other things. So I mean, you could make the argument that it was still congruous with what he promotes. But maybe like some walnuts. He doesn't think those are a good idea. So it wasn't like a pure meat and fruit diet, but it was 90%, right? And it was the worst I had ever felt. And then, but I was like, I don't have any other answers. I'm trying my best, you know? So I'm just watching his videos, and I watched his video on like the Randall cycle or something. I didn't know what that even was. Like, I was like, why are we even talking about this? And then the next day, it was actually August 14th. I remember the day vividly. It was I was scrolling on YouTube like usual, and I came across a channel that had about 32,000 subscribers at the time, and it was Professor Bart K. And the video was a reaction to Paul's video that I had literally just watched the previous day. So I was like, well, that's why YouTube's recommending it to me. Like, I just watched this video. So I clicked on it, and this is funny because me and him laugh about this all the time now. I started watching it, and he has like, you know him. He's got like the coffee mug in his hand, and he's got like the robe on. It's like the most unprofessional look ever in front of the camera. But he's like, he's so like adroit. Like he's like so assiduous with the words. He pauses. He knows what, like he's articulate with everything he's
Yeah.
saying. But it was like so like callous and like rude. I hated it. I was watching the video out of hatred, out of like spite. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, I didn't know if he was a vegan. I was like, because he oftentimes he won't even talk about what diet he follows. It's just the science. So I didn't even know what like. Is he a vegan critiquing Paul? Because that's often what I see. I have no idea what's going on. And then, but it was like really, I watched the whole thing. I watched the entire thing. And the more I was watching, the more convinced, like the more I was like just shutting up and watching. So I was like, okay. And then I watched another one, and the next one was on Thomas DeLauer. I was like, wait a minute, because he's talking about, I realized he's not vegan, he's a carnivore, and he talks about the lack of carbohydrates being like appropriate in the
Uh-huh.
diet. And I went, this is speaking to the worries that I've had this entire time
Yeah.
eating Paul's diet, the entire time. I'm like, it doesn't seem right to be eating this much fruit. My dad and I would talk about my diet all the time because as I learned, he learned. So anything I did, he'd start doing it, right? And we both would like converse about this, and he was like, yeah, it doesn't seem right to me either. Like it doesn't like evolutionarily consistent to eat like this massive amount of fruit every day.
Right.
Also, but I was like, we don't really have a lot of answers right now. And then finally, I came across Bart, and I was like, nope, I'm sold. I sent it to my dad, and he goes, yeah, no, he seems to know what he's talking about. So I decided I was like, okay, fine. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna cut out these carbs, cut out this plant material, but slowly, like Bart promotes. And it was like I started a strict carnivore diet where it was like eggs, pastured eggs, grass-fed butter, so pastured butter and pastured ground beef and steaks, pastured like grass-fed steaks. And I was eating that. Uh, thank God and my grandma for that because she actually has the money to afford that.
Yeah.
Because that's oftentimes, I always tell people if you can't afford that, don't do that because you don't feel the need to do that. Like you don't need to do that.
Yep.
But she was able to do it. So I was like, okay, cool. And she was willing to. So I went on that diet, but the first 2 weeks I was eating like a sweet potato with it, and then I cut it out because I was already effectively slowly transitioning to the carnivore diet over the last few months in the first place. So I was like, I won't go through a 6 to 8 week transition. Like I can just, you know, I can do it a little quickly, a little more quick. And I didn't have any problems with it. I got on the diet. I lost 8 pounds immediately, which I was already skinny. So just for reference, at the time I was 143 pounds at 5'11". So I was skinny. I've always been skinny set, right? But then I went down to 135. I was really skinny, but I was eating over a pound of beef a day. So I was having a pound of grass-fed beef, ground beef, and then I was having like a grass-fed steak or two alongside that, and 4 eggs and 2 sticks of butter, like in a
Yeah.
day, every single day. And I was maintaining 135 pounds.
What kind of butter?
It was, I think it was Kerrygold Irish butter. Yeah, so this was all like conventional. You buy it from the store, not from a local farm, because,
Right.
but
But at least it was grass fed. So
yes, yeah,
yeah.
grass-fed butter.
Yeah.
Once in a while, because I went back and forth from Florida, I would stay there for a few months and then come back home because for my mental sanity, I had to come back home once in a while.
Where is home?
Home is Southern Illinois.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a long way away. So I would have to, the travel fees are not feasible to spend every single month. They're like a few weeks or something. So I had to be very prudent when it came to planning this stuff. So
Yeah.
I'd get treatments, eat that way, eat the grass-fed stuff, come back home, and then I actually would have it was grain-fed butter. My dad, again, recovering from the debt that he had incurred from paying for, my treatments and stuff, since he did start to buy me food, but it was the cheapest stuff that we could get that was still okay. And I actually did very well on it still. Like it was fine. So in terms of how I felt on that diet, it was hard to say. I didn't. This is the part that differs slightly from a lot of carnivore recovery stories, like success stories. Since I was undergoing a lot of painful treatments, like these are not. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like these are very, very painful treatments. You don't want to undergo these treatments unless you need to undergo them.
Mm.
So I was chronically inflamed. I was necessarily going to be, even on a carnivore diet, right? So I didn't feel immediate differences, but I stuck with it because I trusted the philosophy behind it. It was only until after about a year and a half of me being on the diet, a year and a half, I actually started to, first of all, gain musculature back. I wasn't working out, but I was gaining muscle. So I went up to 145 from 135 without doing anything.
Wow.
But my nurses and everything, they were like, you're putting on muscle? I was like, yeah, I'm not doing anything. I'm still lying around because I can't do anything. I can't walk around that comfortably still. I can far more now because again, they've been really helping me. Every treatment, things get better. Even if the graph, like the recovery graph, looks like this a little bit, because it's not a linear process healing. Sometimes it get worse before it can get better. It still was a net positive. So, but still, I was like, I still can't work out. I'm not this is just my diet, you know. But it was only until that Christmas 2023, where I was like, I had the temerity, I had the gall to go ahead and start eating not great stuff because that's the thing. Since I didn't believe that my condition was caused by poor diet, it's probably just a genetic predisposition to developing something really bad. That diet could have contributed to, but not necessarily have caused. And I still kind of believe that, you
Yeah,
know.
I think you're right about that. Things that happen at such a young age, it's rarely just one thing, just the diet. There's additional factors usually.
Yeah,
Not in
yeah,
all cases. For some people, it is just the diet. Like it's just so different. Every case is so different.
exactly.
Yeah.
So since I believed that though, I thought, well, a little bit of carbs won't hurt. A little bit of this won't hurt because, but it was only till then that I actually appreciated what the carnivore diet was doing for me.
Uh-huh.
That was when I started to really notice because I wasn't undergoing as regular of treatments because I was getting better, so there were less frequent treatments, so I was less chronically inflamed. So that means that it was far more easy to recognize when I was becoming inflamed after I ate something. And so when we're talking about carbs, I'm not talking about like what people consider the healthy carbs, like an apple or like white rice. It was Christmas time. I was
Hi.
not, yeah, I wasn't having the great stuff. There were some Reese's cups on the table next to me, and I was like, oh yeah, okay. So, is yeah. Long story short, I ate them, and I was eating like it was only about 50 grams of carbs per day, probably, but blood pressure starts going up, heat flashes. So I was getting warmer, but it wasn't like a warmer that you get when you eat protein, it's like natural, like comfortable thermogenesis. It was like I'm about to start sweating. Like I don't feel good.
Mm. And
Um,
that's only like less than 50 grams of, let's say, Reese's. It's not a lot. If you look at Reese's cups, it's probably what, maybe 10 grams in one.
yeah, yeah,
That's
and
not
and
a lot.
so yeah, and I don't pretend like it was the most ideal carbohydrate sources if you're going to eat one,
Mm.
and so it could have been if people want to attribute it to the carbs, if people want to attribute it to the seed oils in them, or both. I mean, all the ways that, and I'm sure that all of those have a role to play.
Right.
But
They
I think
have
the
TBHQ in them, that preservative that
yes,
makes kids very
hyperactive and
ADHD.
stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yes.
Yep. TBHQ. Yeah. But I was like, in a way, it was really discomforting. So it made me anxious because like, oh gosh, I mean, I've been in health crisis situations, and so I have like this natural disposition away from that. Like I don't like having symptoms like that. But it was also comforting again because it was like, wow, I mean, I'm right in my conclusions, right? Like this makes sense. So it was only for a month that I did, less than a month that I was doing that, and I swore to myself, I was like, okay, this next January I'm not going to do that, and I went right back onto it in January, and ever since then, if anything, I experimented with less strict variations, like I was having some pepperoni and some salami, some dairy like cheese and stuff like that. Um, and I'll tell you what, I'm back to just straight, effectively almost a lion diet. I mean, I eat butter still. I don't think I'm ever going to give that up because it doesn't give me a problem and it tastes very good. So,
Have you tried
it,
ghee instead?
no, I bought ghee a long time ago, planning to use it, and then I never did for some reason. So I still have it, but I haven't tried it. But I know that a lot of people actually, if they have problems with butter, they go away when they have ghee. I've heard that anecdote before, and I don't know if it's because there's something that's still in butter after they process it.
There's all kinds, like even lactose and casein is still, you
It's like
still have trace amounts.
trace
So
amounts.
yeah, so
Yeah.
ghee just is clarified butter. It removes all trace amounts of casein, lactose, and whey, and probably other things as well. And so it's just like more concentrated pure fat.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's I mean, hence the name clarified butter. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. It sounds far more appropriate to be eating for people that have an issue with all the because I know that people that can be really sensitive to that stuff, like trace amounts of anything.
Yeah.
Even trace amounts of oils in food if they were cooked in them or cooked on a grill that like oftentimes has oil on them to cook other foods. It
Exactly.
can
Or you
really
use
affect people.
Pam. Sometimes it's like, what's one spray of Pam? But if you're very sensitive and it's causing you autoimmune issues, the only way to find out is to eliminate that, you know?
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, right now I'm eating very cheap cuts of steak to save money because my goal is eventually doing what I'm doing, which I was also going to get to. I'm really sorry. Again, I know there's been a long talk. Every time that people ask me about my story, I always have to say like it's going to be long. I'm trying to keep it short, but it's long. Um, but I'm trying to get actually a house down in Florida with the help of my girlfriend because then I can get treatments again. It's been almost a year since I've gotten a treatment because now that I'm to a functional level, I'm trying to get to a point where eventually maybe I can pay for them myself. I mean, these aren't cheap treatments. It's a private practice. So,
Yeah.
um,
And insurance isn't paying for them?
yeah, insurance doesn't accept those treatments. So you can file claims to them, and depending on what your insurance is, they may accept it. But I mean, they don't naturally. The people there don't take insurance. You have to file the claims to them because they can't. They won't. No insurance will accept them if they
Right.
even try to file it through. So they're like,
Like
yeah,
a functional medicine doctor. You can see a functional medicine doctor, pay the $350 visit, and then try to see, like, file it and see. And
yeah.
oftentimes it will get rejected.
Yeah, so PRP and prolotherapy, they consider that experimental. So they try, and I mean, this clinic also does stem cell therapy the same way. So they can extract your bone marrow, or they can extract stem cells from your bone marrow and then use
Oh,
that.
okay.
And they've been
But are
talking
they
about,
doing it the way, Dr. Adil Khan, the guy who does the real stem cells? Because you can't do it in the United States. You should check him out. It's
yeah, I'm not familiar
Oh,
actually. I'm
okay.
not
I'm gonna
familiar with them.
email them to you right now, the name, so we don't forget. That way, by the end of this interview, you'll have it in your inbox.
Okay.
Adil Khan, he's very famous, Khan, and I mean, he's like worked with Tony Robbins and everybody, and he can't do it here because the regulations prevent processing the stem cells. They say it's stem cells in the United States, but they're not really stem cells. They've already started differentiating, and that's at that point where
Mm,
they inject it in you. So those regulations are what prevent the doctors from doing it the right way. And so you might get a little benefit, but it's wildly less effective than doing it the right way. And so he practices, I think he teaches at the University of Toronto, and he has a clinic in Cabo San Lucas and I believe in Dubai. So
Okay.
I don't know
Interesting.
if you
Yeah,
know.
thanks for
Yeah.
that. I didn't
Hmm.
know that.
Yeah.
I hadn't tried it with them because the PRP and the prolotherapy were already working, and the stem. Yeah, when they do the other thing, I think it's a little. It might be more expensive. I'm pretty sure it is.
Oh
But
yeah, it's like I had a client try to reach out to him for a joint. Instead of a joint replacement, I think it's like they quoted him like 20K.
yeah,
Something
yeah.
crazy like
So
that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's not cheap.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, I mainly eat the yeah, I'm eating the cheap cuts of steak, and then I'm having grass-fed butter, and I'm having some salt with that, and then I have eggs once in a while. I've pretty much cut out dairy. I was trying to have heavy cream, like make some like homemade ice creams, really simple. But dairy itself seems to really just not work well for me. It doesn't work well with my stomach, and it also just inflames me. I start getting almost like Raynaud's hands. Like my hands get all red, and my joints flare in my fingers and stuff. And I'm sure that I'm just one of those really sensitive people. It could, like, that's the thing that I always say, like, if you think that dairy doesn't affect you, it may very well be, but it may very well be the case that it's just this much that it's affecting you to the point where it doesn't debilitate you, as compared to someone like me that has a disposition towards really reacting, like, just, you know.
Mm.
But I've cut that out. I have very little bits of like shredded cheese, maybe, but now it's basically none. I'm good with just searing some steak in a pan and eating that. So that's really what I've been doing. I'm back to that, and I don't think that I'm really going to be doing anything else. So, um,
Nice.
yeah.
In terms of percentage improvement, how much improvement would you say you have had in your symptoms right now compared to when you started?
Okay. So when I started the diet or when I started getting treatments?
When when all the symptoms of EDS started compared to now?
Oh, okay. Well, when they started, they got really bad, like way worse. Eventually. Uh, so yeah, in terms of a
At their
percentage,
worst, let's say at their worst.
yeah, okay. So at my worst to now, um, I have made probably a 65-70% improvement.
Wow.
Yeah. It's hard to say because a lot of times what would happen is I would think that I'm like 80% improved. They actually tell you this in before you get your treatment. They have a paper and you fill it out every single time, and they go, "All right, where's your pain? Where's all this stuff? And what is your percentage of improvement after undergoing treatments?" And what will happen is if you actually look at my record, I put 80% at one point, and then the next time I put like 60% after the treatment, because a lot of times the treatments can make things worse before they get better.
Right.
So it's just, a lot of times it's really hard. But if I had to do a net, like what I think now after everything has gone on, I think it's probably about a 70% just to give a little buffer there. I'm not fully there. If I was told like, okay, you have to get a normal job like you used to have, I would probably have problems. Like I would undoubtedly have problems still.
Mhm.
I tried doing resistance training. I started this year with the X3 bar. A lot of people are familiar with that, and I got it particularly because yes, it's said to be better than static weights for everyone, right? But it was also because it's designed to underload joints, and I have a joint issue. So I was like, well, let me use that instead and see what happens. And I now I'm 100 and what 56 pounds, like 11 pounds of muscle has probably been gained. Uh, but the problem is that the only way that I'm able to work out without being completely debilitated afterwards, I feel like I'm back 2 years back, like transported 2 years back, is if I'm taking, and this isn't a plug, this is just fact, is when I'm taking Cerule products. It's like it
Is what?
is when I'm taking my Cerule products that I
Oh,
promote. Yeah. And not just like not stem enhance. I'm talking like the Cyactive supplements. That was the only time that I was actually able to work. I tried working out before taking those,
okay.
and it completely just debilitated me
Can you talk
every
more
single
about
time.
them?
Yeah, so there's a formula, there's two formulas that this company Cerule promotes. There's the AFA sort of formula that is in the stem enhance that's supposed to it's supposed to release your own inherent stem cells from your bone marrow. And then there's another formula, it's their Cyactive formula that's based upon spirulina. And they have multiple Cyactive formula or products. They have just the regular Cyactive, which is for just overall inflammation. Then they have Cyactive Joint, which is specifically tailored towards your joints. And then they have a Collagen Active, which is for anything that has collagen, so your skin. They promote a lot of skin, effects with that product, and it's a drink mix. And then they have Hydra Active, which is an electrolyte supplement. All of these have their Cyactive product in them. And I was
How
taking,
do you how do you spell it out, just in case people want to check it out?
yeah, so it's Cerule.
The
It's the
rule.
rule. Yeah. And then
Cerule. Okay.
yeah, and then when it comes to Cyactive, you'll find their products on their website, but that's Cyactiv, no E at the end.
Okay.
So that's their product line. But the thing was, is it was like, but I learned it, I heard it from Bart, and at the time I was like, well, I trust its judgment, so I'll start taking Stem Enhance in the first place. So I was taking Stem Enhance for a long time already, and within a month, I had it was associated at least with a complete removal of my acne that I'd had since I was like 13 years old, while I was undergoing all these inflammatory treatments. But I don't know about you, but we live in a society where people promote all types of products. And so I was really jaded towards any products. I was like, okay, everyone promotes something. It's not going to work. And so I was so jaded that even though I trusted Bart's judgment and that's what got me to buy the product, even though what ended up happening was when the acne went away, I went, no, that's not the product. That's not it. So I took it. I still took it, but I was like, I'm not going to say anything yet. And then, it's also hard to just, there's so many confounders. I was undergoing treatments and I was on the carnivore diet and I was taking Stem Enhance. So
Hmm.
if there's any improvements in any of my health markers, I mean, I say like my actual symptomology, my presentation, I can't responsibly attribute that to one or the other. Like as much as I may want to, I can't responsibly do it. I'd have no idea. So what I say is it was the taking of it was associated with that. And then what happened was I was still taking it, taking it, taking it. And then once I started my channel up, which that's a story in and of itself. And if you would allow me to go over an hour, I don't know how much time you have, then I can get into it.
Yes, you
But
can. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay, okay, thank you. Because I feel like a lot of people want to know that part of my story too, because how does that lead into you starting a channel? That one will take less time to explain. But once I started the channel up and I was actually promoting the product, I was able to get some of these products for free. And anyone can if they do things the right way. And I always tell people that they can because I don't want anyone paying for these products, especially if they really need them. Um, I was like, okay, well, let's test out these products. I've never tested them out. And I was like, okay, so let's take it. And as I'm recording a video, after having taken all of the products, and that is a caveat, I ordered all of the Cyactive products and took them all at once. So how much of it is due to, the Cyactive or just the sheer amount that I had taken? I try to be as responsible as I can with the reporting. Like as much as I may want to promote a product or whatever, like I'm going to be honest with it. So I took all of them. So that's a caveat there. That's a key point. But nevertheless, I was recording a video for my channel, and I remember thinking to myself, first, I was like, do I have brain fog usually? Because right now I'm performing way better than like it was so apparent. I didn't even have that much of an experience when I had gone on the carnivore diet because I was undergoing a lot of strenuous treatments. So, and also, let's say the carnivore diet was helping with brain fog. Perhaps the change was so gradual that I never noticed it. That can happen sometimes too. Like I said, only until you stop the carnivore diet can you oftentimes see what it was doing for you, right? But I was like, right now, like my mental capacity is like far greater than it usually is. So that was the first thing I noticed. And once again, I was like, can't be the products. It's just the fluke. It's just today, right? And then what ended up happening was something I could not ignore. I was sitting in my chair working, like on the computer, and ironically, I was having greater pain in my abdomen. Like it felt like I was like flashback a year prior. And I was like, what's going on? So I took a shower because usually that relaxes my muscles, and a lot of times that can be like a hard reset and it could fix the pain. And it was still really bad. It was like worse. I was like, well, the only thing I did, it was like markedly worse. Like what could have did this or done this? And I went, well, the only thing that I did was I took Cyactive, but why would it make it worse? Well, I realized I still have inflammation in my ribs. I still do. And inflammation will act as a splint for anything if there's like if there's swelling in between a joint. So it's inflamed, but that causes swelling. But that the swelling can function as a splint. And I realized I was like, well, I have more mobility in my ribs, like I can move them around more. And I realized I was like, what if it was because I thought, and I'm pretty certain about it, I was like, what if it alleviated the inflammation in my ribs to the point where they're moving around again? Like they're moving too much, or too much. In my case, they're moving too much. And then I'm having this flare up, and I went, but that's a reach. I don't have any evidence for it. So I still didn't put any like, but it was like the evidence was staring at me in the face. But I was like, okay, I'm not doing it. It was the fourth time. It was my fourth experience with it where I said, okay, I cannot deny that these products work, and maybe it won't work for everyone. I can't guarantee it. You can never guarantee that, but it works for me. What happened was I worked out. I started working out again. I went, okay, you know what? I want to work out because even if it's bad in the short term, like it hurts me in the short term, increased muscular stability, I think will help with my condition. So I was like, the benefits outweigh the initial cons. So I started working out, and first time I did that, I was like I said, completely debilitated. Like it was actually, I got really, really despondent. I was like, wow, this have I really made that much progress? If this just leaves me in the floor, right? Um, so I remember I couldn't even drive to my dad's, and so I worked out, but I needed to go to my dad's to pick up my stuff because I get all my stuff mailed to his house, and I couldn't drive there to get my cerule that had come in. So I hadn't taken Cyactive in like a month or so, whatever. I just wasn't taking them. And so I had my girlfriend take me. I was like, I hate to ask you any favor at all, actually, but can you please drive me to my dad's house to pick up my cerule? And she actually like she opened it up, she grabbed all the pills out or the capsules out, and she also stirred the drink mix and everything and handed it to me. And I drank it, and I was like, okay, well, let's see if that works. And again, given the society we live in, I was like, it's not going to work. A product like that, no products work, right? Well, later that day, it was a long story, but she got stuck at Sam's. She went to the store, and I had to go pick her up myself. And I wasn't angry at her. I was angry at the situation because it was not her fault why she was stuck at Sam's. And because I was like, the one day that I can't, like, I work out and I'm like in the floor because of it. I have to go out of my way. I have to drive anyway. So I get in the car though, and I'm like, I drive there, and I'm like, wow, I'm feeling like less inflamed. But I was like, oh, lucky me. Like it must have just subsided a little bit as time has gone on. I get out of the car as I park, and I'm like speed walking through the parking lot and through the store. And I wasn't thinking about it at first until I met up with her, and I went, I'm sold, man. That really, like, I was in the floor that day, and within 3 hours of me taking that, I was back up and running. Like quite literally, actually, like just like
Wow.
speed walking through the store and everything like that. And that's just, yeah.
Was
No,
it
go
just
ahead.
one specific product or like a multitude?
That's the key. So again, when I got those products again, it wasn't just one. I had taken all of them again. So perhaps once again, perhaps it's the sheer amount of Cyactive that I was taking, but that was the common denominator. That was the only factor that I had changed was the Cyactive. And it's something that it's gotten to the point now, like after that day, I cannot deny it. Like I cannot deny. I've never taken anything that has had an effect like that. Um, and I've also never experienced so many people telling me that the product works themselves. People I personally know. My dad swears by it. He was taking it for what my dad's dad, my grandpa, recently, very recently. He has very bad like he has heart issues. He's got like a widowmaker like or two actually. He's got a few in there. And he had a brain aneurysm recently. He loses circulation in his legs when he sits down. It's bad. He's got really bad circulation issues. Like pre-diabetic, if not diabetic now. But the problem is he still he doesn't want to change his diet. He doesn't want to change anything, right? And so it's like
Yeah.
you gotta expect that to happen. Well, or you gotta expect to have to make a change in order to fix these issues. Well, my dad had recently gotten a free bottle of another product that they have called Plasma Flow, which is designed to clear, to improve circulation, particularly in the microvasculature. So like capillaries and stuff like that. Not the major arteries, but he he had a free bottle and he was like, "Hey, Dad, here. like take it. And he goes, okay. And of course, he didn't think it would work. So he took the whole bottle and he was like, all right, I'm done. And a few days pass and he's messaging my dad. And my dad texted me about this because he thought it was really funny. And he was like, give me the link to buy because I'm losing circulation again in my legs. Like immediately started losing circulation. He didn't realize the improvement because it was super gradual until he stopped taking it. And now he's buying like all the others. So not only do the Sciactive products work, at least for me, not only does the Stem Enhance Ultra product seem to work for a lot of people as well, but also the Plasma Flow. Like this company
Plasma
seems real.
flow.
Yep. Yeah. So it's plasma PLASMA plasma, and then flow is FLO.
Oh, not OW.
Yeah. No, not OW, just O,
FLO.
and it's one word as well.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
And the brand is Cerule.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I mean, I know since I'm one of those people that is also jaded and many other people towards products, if people do not want to buy, first of all, what I also say is do not purchase product through my link at all, or anyone's link for that matter, if you're not on a carnivore diet, if you haven't fixed your diet. Like diet is the number one, there's no such thing as a magic pill. Not even these. These are not magic pills. These are not magic things. You know, fix your diet, however long that may take you to do. You could try and fix your diet and take these at the same time. There's people that do that, but if you're not, like, at least make sure that you're fixing the diet, right? And a lot of times that's all you need. But some people, if they're, I've noticed if they have a chronic health condition and they've had it for a long time, what can often happen is they seem to need an extra kick. They get like 80% there, and then they need that extra kick. And sometimes once they get that extra kick, they don't need another one. So you can stop taking it. Like I am super lenient with people because I don't want people to think I'm like a shill or something. Like there's many of those online, and I actually go out of my way to not promote any other product. So, because I think that is a sign of integrity, and I like to be that person. You know, why wouldn't I? So, but I tell people like I swear by the products. I I I can't swear that they will work for you, but if you want to try it, I think that they will. And so that's my approval of it. But anyway, are there any comments you want to make before I try I get into I do only have a little bit of time left because I do have another call at 12:30 from on my end. But I was going to get into like
How
how I'm
much
on
time
my
do you have?
mm, 15 minutes.
Okay.
If you have questions, we can go to get into those. Yeah.
So you want to go into the podcast thing? Is that where you want to go?
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of people may wonder, you know, why am I here in this space, right? Because like it's one thing to explain why I'm carnivore and what brought me there, but what started this channel and what I'm doing, right? Um, so
The only quick question that I had is,
yeah,
have you looked into gene therapies and or gut health? I feel like gene therapy might be more powerful.
I haven't looked into gene therapy. No, I've tried to look into like, are there associated genes with Ehlers-Danlos to even try and get like a picture, like a lead on that? And unfortunately, I don't think there's too many leads. There's some for different types of EDS, but not hypermobile EDS particularly.
Hmm.
I'd have to do more research on that. I think the reason why I haven't put too much emphasis on that is not because I don't think that it's worthwhile. It's because I've kind of like subconsciously and consciously come to terms with the fact that I have the condition and that I can fix it through these means. So my brain has kind of like been like, okay, well, who cares kind of thing. I mean, but at the same time, I probably should care because there's many other people that have this condition, even if it's not as severe as me. And if I could try and look into it to try and give people leads, that would be best. But it's just I've been distracted with a lot of other things. But
Okay.
yeah, I've thought it's come to mind before, yes,
Right.
and actually recently.
Right. I
I've
mean,
been like,
there's so many things like sickle cell anemia. They've already cured the first kid with gene therapy with sickle cell anemia. Like there's a
yeah,
lot of
yeah, I heard
things.
about that. Yeah.
Mhm. And there's more. Once you go down that rabbit hole, it's very inspiring, you know. Um, that good. So I just wanted to cover that, and really, really quickly, how much do you feel that exercise was powerful also in improving your symptoms? Because I feel a lot of people sometimes will get pain, will get a lot of soreness from accumulation of chronic disease over time. And 99% out of the time, the health experts they see are like more about be careful. Don't, oh,
Mm-hmm.
it's painful. You shouldn't stress it out.
Mm-hmm.
And when they come work with me, I'm like, you have to train through the pain initially to get stronger until you get there. And I have found a lot of success with the most severe cases you can think of, because generally speaking, they don't seek me out unless they have a severe case. Usually it's either weight loss or it's like a severe case of autoimmune or chronic condition. And so I'm doing it completely differently. And I'm wondering what your experience has been with that.
Yeah, so my experience is it's a little mixed because there's pros and there's cons. So like for example, again, it's like you said, fight through the pain at first, right? It was really bad and then but it was getting better. Um the thing is since I'm more sensitive, like what ends up happening is when I work out, what you do is you fatigue the muscle. That's the entire purpose of the workout. You fatigue the muscle and you actually slightly damage it so that it can repair and get bigger in size, or stronger, or both. So what happens is initially still, since my ligaments are not very robust, I will have a flare up. I'll get knocked back down after a workout every single time, like for about a day or two. It used to be I was only working out once a week, full body. So that was actually all I was doing, but I was gaining like significant every single week I was getting stronger, even with just once a week full body workout. As long as I was going to failure, like that's all I was doing. And perhaps I could have made greater gains if I had done more, but that I was trying to find the balance of being careful versus pushing through pain because there is a balance that you have to have. So initially it was just really bad. Then it was really bad for like the next day, and it was n never as bad as it was when I first started working out. Um, but the thing is the more muscle I put on, whenever the inflammation does go down, the more stability I do feel that I have. Like if I feel so much more. It was there was a point where I had to like I still have to do this, but it's nowhere near as bad as it used to be. I would have to spend an hour trying to go to sleep by shifting my body in some way and like trying to pop something in place and have it stay there so I can go to sleep. Now, I mean, I can sleep on my back, and I've never even been able to do that. It's always been like on my side that I have to sleep on. And it's because I can feel the stability in my muscles when it like stabilizing the area. So I can only imagine actually how much stronger I would be if I also had the underlying ligament strength, to do these exercises. Because
In other
really,
words, less X3, more real workouts. Because if you have instability and weakness in ligaments, that's exactly where you want to put a little more pressure, right? As opposed to offload. You don't want to have an imbalance, right, between stressing too much the muscle as compared to the joint.
yeah, I mean, I know that the X3 bar still does load the joint to some extent. I mean, it's just it underloads it more than like a bar would, like a static weight would. For example, if I don't think that I would actually be able to, like, I'm remembering whenever I was doing resistance training before I ever got treatment. Again, trying to push through the symptoms because it's all in my head, right? And I was doing that, and it was really, really affecting like my elbows whenever I would use a static weight for like bicep curls, for example. Like I would use a full bar, right? And it was really, really the strain that it would put on my elbows and like right here was really, really bad. And I
Mm,
think that that would still it happens even now with the X3 bar if I put enough weight on it.
gotcha.
So even with a thing that underloads the joint, I'm still getting strain on the joint. And so I think I'm still strengthening the ligaments. And I think the X3 bar is a good balance. I do calisthenic type stuff too. I mean, like I have this little bar here is that's my pull-up bar. So it's a very small
Yeah,
room that we're in here, but I do a lot more than
like
pull-ups
functional
on pull-up bar.
movements. Yeah,
Yeah. Like there's bars on the bottom that I'll use for push-ups. So I'll do the push-ups there. I'll do tricep dips on there.
nice.
I do leg lifts on there, which I know that's not exactly a joint stressor. That's you're just lifting your legs, but then I do pull-ups on there, of course, too, as well. There's other things that I probably could find ways of utilizing the pull-up bar for, but I haven't come across them. Um, but yeah, so exercise has been there's pros and cons. I mean, I have to be very careful. I have to make sure that I'm not working out like every single day of the week because um, I just started working out again. I was sick recently, probably because I eat the carnivore diet. That's what all the critics will say. But I had a fever and everything, and I was like, I can't even if I wanted to work out and push through this, like, I'm not going to perform well either. So I took actually the week off. I started yesterday to work out again. And my body already has to get used to it again because my blood pressure afterwards, I could feel a slight increase like for like an hour or two afterwards. So my
Right.
body has to adapt again because I took like 2 weeks off because if I already work out once a week, you know,
True.
taking it,
True.
yeah. So yeah, I try and find the balance of don't overwork yourself or else you will actually find stagnation in muscle growth because the entire reason a muscle grows is because it repairs itself fully. So if you don't give it time to repair, you're not gonna build muscle. But also trying to make it to where, I'm working out enough to increase
Exactly.
stability.
Very well said. And that's exactly, and it's so hard sometimes to mention this to people because that first workout, it's so painful to them because they've been so sedentary with so much chronic pain that they think that it's the end of the world. Like they can do it. It's like, no, you see
Yeah,
that
no,
it's gonna get better, and it's trying to figure out a way to deliver this message. It's yeah, not overtraining. I'm not asking you to go from sedentary to do a 500-pound deadlift. It's like
yeah,
one step, right? One step because eventually you could get to an amazing strength, but it's not gonna happen tomorrow nor next month. It's like
hmm
a little stressor, but the stressor is necessary. Whereas 99% of the health experts in the industry is like, here you don't just take a supplement or just you don't have to feel any discomfort, and it's like, oh, you're in pain, here you do so that you don't feel pain, and it's like, no, the only way out is through. And
yeah.
yeah.
Well, and the reason I started doing it was because I was also afraid of the pain that it would induce, and that's why I was postponing it for so long. But actually, the reason I decided to do it was, first of all, I thought the net benefit would be a benefit. It would be a net benefit in the first place. But I was really tired of as much as this is how I've been raised. No matter how much of a valid excuse I have for not doing something, whether I actually should or shouldn't do it, because like let's say I'm so debilitated and there's something going on that discourages me from doing something else, and perhaps it's to the point where I shouldn't do that thing because it could actually harm me worse. I have been raised to have such a strong work ethic to a fault that I just still do it anyway, whether I should or shouldn't. And so that's one of the reasons why I pushed through and went to school when I probably should have stayed home a little more often,
Mm.
or I went to work when I probably should have called in a little more often, because I never. It was really ironic because when I was working, everyone around me was like, I would have people like, oh, I called in today. And I went, why? And go, well, I have a runny nose. I'm like, are you out of your mind? Are you serious right now? Because like, and I would never call in. I called in like one time. And so
Yeah.
that was like my thing. So when it came to working out, yeah, I was postponing it until finally I had enough, and I was like, no, like I'm tired of actually feeling even though I am debilitated, I'm tired of living like I am. Like I don't like that. And so I forced myself and I pushed through it. And my girlfriend will always tell me like you're pushing yourself too hard, and I'm like, not hard enough, right? Like
Yeah,
and
but
it's
that's probably played a role also in you really reversing a lot of these symptoms. You sometimes you gotta
mhm,
go for it a little bit. So
yeah.
yeah. So you
Yeah.
want to tell it? I know you're about to leave us, so you want to tell us a little bit about the podcast?
Yeah, yeah. So many people may already know that I have a channel up. It's sort of a podcast format, like you can listen to it as if it's a podcast, but I record reaction videos to people online that in many cases I actually used to listen to, which is one of the reasons I started the channel up. So
Don't tell me there's one on me.
no, 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 no,
Okay,
no,
good.
no.
Good.
Maybe for April Fool's Day or something. Yeah.
Okay, fine.
But there was long, okay, yeah, let me just try and figure out where to start. So during my treatment process in Florida, I was there for months, as I've already said. I had no friends there. I had no family there besides my grandma. It was a very tough time. That's something that I oftentimes overlook in the interview. Like I don't often talk about it. It was a really, really tough time. Like depression, anxiety. Not once did I ever feel like suicidal or anything. That never crosses my mind. Um, but it was like I was thinking to myself, I was like, I wonder if this is what leads people to that. It was that bad. It was really bad. Um, and so, given my work ethic, I'd never sat around and like watched a bunch of YouTube videos about nothing or like watched TV. I actually would feel guilty if I did that. I'd feel like anxious and be like, I need to do something. I need to actually do something with my time. And so that's what I did. When I came across Bart K, I binge watched all of his videos, and I had a Google Doc open, and I was taking notes on every single major point that he would make, and then like there were bullet points, and then I would revise the bullet points, and then it got to a point where I was like, I could write a paper on this. So if it was about fiber, or if it was about vitamin C, or if it was about cholesterol, I was writing entire papers, and then I was finding citations for them, and I was putting the superscripts on them like it was a research paper, and then I was revising them and editing them and all that stuff. And then I was making a Google Drive folder of all of these papers. So fiber, cholesterol, vitamin C, scurvy, stuff like that, and then like all this stuff. It got me down, like looking down a rabbit hole. But I was sending them to all my friends, and I was like, read this because this is crazy information. Like, you guys need to know this. Um, Again, given the fact that I'm an anomaly in my generation, not many of them cared about the papers. They cared about, when the next party was. But I was like, just read through it one time. It just takes one time. Well, eventually, I was, from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed, watching his videos. I was like, no, this is some good stuff. How some people will fall asleep with the TV on? I was having his videos on autoplay. Like, I was fall asleep. I was like, yeah, I maybe had a little bit of obsession, but not exactly with Bart, but
Yeah.
with the information. I was like,
That's
this
actually, you're
is crazy.
describing me to a T. We have that brain that just loves to, and especially when we're put in situations where we have to figure it out.
Mhm, exactly, exactly. And so it actually had there was relevance to what I was going through, So I was like, I want to learn this stuff. Well, one day, my friend and I, which is now my girlfriend, Bella, yeah, Edward and Bella, quite funny, but yeah. So there was a time where we were on the phone, and I said, I was talking about the papers, and I was like, man, I could write a book with this stuff, and she laughed, and I laughed too, and then I went, wait a minute, no, 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 that's actually that would be a great way of utilizing my time, and so I spent the next 2 weeks. It only took me 2 weeks, 14 hours to 16 hours a day. I wrote my book that I have out, Contraindicated. And of course, it's based off of the word that Bart uses all the time. But I thought it wasn't just a copycat thing. It seemed like a really good use of the word because the book is entirely about. Well, the subtitle sums it up quite well. It's a closer look and revision of mainstream health axioms that have perpetuated illness, disorder, and disease for over a decade, or
Whoa.
sorry, over a century. That is,
Contraindicated by Edward Goeke. Go
yeah.
buy it now.
Yeah, so I wrote the book. The reason why it took me so little time was because half of it was already written with those papers. The
That's
other,
so funny. I do the
yeah,
same thing. I have an anti-aging document. I have a skin document. All the things that I'm interested in, and I'm constantly researching. It takes so much discipline for me to shut off my brain and stop researching. I'm like the
yeah, yeah,
opposite of
yeah.
most people,
Well,
right? And so I
yeah,
put them all in my documents. And so when I have to launch a guide or when I'm ready to write a book, it's done.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I get in trouble with her sometimes because she's like, "You never take a break." Like, like even on weekends, she's like, "You're still working." I'm like, "Well, no, I'm not. This is fun for me. Like, this is my hobby." You know? Uh,
Exactly. I
yeah.
get I get you 100%.
Yeah. Well, I wrote the book and eventually we went through this whole process of getting it published. It's on Amazon and stuff. But during that time, I thought that I was just going to write a book, right? I was like, okay. And the main reason why was actually, as much as it is for other people to know the information, the main reason was for me to tie everything into one thing just to order my brain. Everything was all over the place in my brain, and I wanted one document in order of everything. So it all ties everything in. And so it was for my own sanity. And I just released it,
Exactly.
to the
Yes.
public. So, but what ended up happening was I was still watching Bart at the time, and my grandma hears him, and she goes, "What are you watching?" And I said, you're not gonna want to watch this stuff. And she goes, "No, no, no, put him on the TV. I want to hear what's going on." I go, "Oh man,
Oh
okay,
no.
fine." I said, fine, fine, let's put him on. Believe it or not, she loved it. She thought it was funny. She thought it was great. She thought it was like but she was like, why are we not taught this stuff? Then this is like like I mean he's a former researcher. And I was like, yeah, I mean he's qualified. You can't really get more qualified than that. But I was like, this is awesome. I can watch these videos with her, like, and not feel like I have to keep it to myself, right? So I was watching them on the TV, like YouTube on TV, and a few weeks go by and we're like binge watching him because I'm trying to finish all of his videos. I'm trying to learn as much as I can. She goes, Eddie, you could do this stuff, right? And I said, no. And that's the other thing. I'm a perfectionist to the point of like I underestimate every single thing that I'm capable of because
Mm.
I make sure that it's like perfect before I ever try it kind of thing. Like I'm perfect at it before I try it. So
Yeah.
if that makes sense. And so I will always doubt. I will be like, no, no. And as much as it's can be a bad thing, it's actually a really good thing because that makes it to where the quality of my stuff is as best as I could possibly get it. Like I don't slack, you know? So it's a blessing and a curse. There's pros and cons to it.
Oh,
But
I can
since
talk so much about that, but yeah, I understand that. Yes.
yeah. Yeah, so she was like, "No, Eddie, really, you can." And I thought she was just being unctuous and whatever. As I went to my room that night and I called my dad and I kind of called him for like the voice of sanity, of common sense. And I went, "Dad, my grandma said this," and he goes, "Oh yeah, no, no, I've been thinking that for a while." And so he actually decided. He goes, "Listen, think of this. I'm already in debt because of." I know it was funny because he said, "I'm in debt because of you," but I don't mean any offense by that. I was like, "Yeah, no, I get it." He goes. I will invest. I will think of this as a business investment. I will invest $2,000 for equipment for you to start a channel up.
Wow.
And I
I
went,
love your grandma and I love your dad.
yeah, yeah, yeah. They were the biggest helps during that time, and the supporters. And I went, really? And he was like, yeah. So actually, for 6 months, I was making videos before I ever became public because I was making sure it was exact before I like perfect before I started videos. And even then, they still weren't perfect, but I've adapted along the way. But I mean, yes, I wrote the book and I had already written research papers with months of looking at this stuff, but I also was like, well, there's college level classes that you can take that you don't even need to go to. I was learning, I was like, okay, I'm into biochemistry now. Like it was everything that I was learning was making me want to learn more things about like more topics. Like now I'm into botany. Like if I had told myself at 16 years old, like my 16-year-old self that I would have been in botany, like he would have been like, what happened to you? And then that would have been a long story.
Let me give
But
you something to obsess about. The single best book so far that I've read. You must read this if you haven't already. It's called The Art of the Impossible by Stephen Kotler or Steve Kotler. I'll send you.
that sound yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, okay, yeah. Send that to me because that sounds familiar. Actually,
An
it does
absolute
sound familiar.
must read because I feel like your brain is like mine. And if you're like that, there, I won't say more. Just, I mean, the title tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I understand. I understand what you're saying. That I'd be interested to look into that. Yes, but since that's the case, and I promise now I'm almost done. Um, I was like, well, what happens? I can't go to college. First of all, I don't have any money, but also like I can't guarantee when I'll be like okay to do assignments. Sometimes I have bad days, sometimes I have good days. So I'd like to work on my own schedule, which is what's great about my job now. I can do exactly that with no pressure on me and no deadlines. Um, so I was like, well, how easy would it be to look up like a biochemistry course, like that college level students take? You Google or you put it on YouTube like biochemistry 101 and you have the entire course. Like it's not like a freebie like 10% of the course. Oh, sign up for the university to be a student so you can learn the rest. It's the whole thing. I was like, no way, it's that easy for everything. Yeah, it
Yeah,
is. It is. So
it is.
what
They
I
call them also, even you can go to Harvard and Yale, they have MOOCs, like massive open classes. You can actually take those classes. You just make them available for the world.
hmm
Yeah,
And so it's one thing to have the classes be free, but it's another thing to actually know how to teach yourself if you're going to have no teacher and it's just going to be yourself.
right.
So I was learning lesson by lesson biochemistry first. Usually you're supposed to learn cellular biology first. I learned it backwards. I learned biochemistry first, then cell biology. Uh, Biochemistry, I was like lesson one, and I would write a research paper on every single lesson. Every single one. Like usually you're supposed to do that for every chapter. It's like every single lesson I was doing that. And I recently just looked over them again, like just for but I was learning like every bit of this. So when people want to pretend like I don't know what I'm talking about, like I listen, I know I'm young and appeal to authority is a fallacy, but appeal to experience isn't. Right. So if you have experience like doing research, that's a valid appeal. And so I understand people's qualms with that. But that's why I got everything vetted further with Bart. I finally got a hold of him. Like I can call him as frequently as I want now, which is great. Um, and I got everything vetted over the course of a year now. I had a call with him every single week, going over every single thing. So it's like I'm not just some dude like just saying things on the internet, right? So yeah, I started up the channel and I had the goal in mind that, well, since I can't hold a regular job, if I make this my job, it will be benefiting other people because a lot of people live vicariously through my character on the videos and people like that. But also they're learning. Um, there's like I'm entertaining as well. I'm providing a service to people, so I'm benefiting other people, and I'm also benefiting myself because I'm raising money to get myself down to Florida to complete my treatment. Like I'm not planning to live in Florida forever. That's not the plan. I know a lot of people like that, but the only thing that's stopping us from doing that is mostly it's made up of people that are 50, 60 years old on average. We're a different generation, so in terms of like where we want our family to be, But I mean,
I can tell you, I'm in Ocala, which is an hour and 15 minutes away from Orlando. And so
hmm
it's a central location. You've got Gainesville, which is a college town 45 minutes up.
oh,
You've got Tampa, which is an hour and 40 minutes
yeah,
west.
yeah.
You've got Orlando, an hour and 15 minutes down. So we have all the annual, we just bought the Disney annual passes and we have the Universal annual pass. So we have access to like 10 theme parks that you can go as much as you want now for the whole year. So every week we go one day, went to Disney, Universal, Islands of Adventure, Epcot. Like it's fantastic. And then you're 2 hours away from Daytona and the beaches. And actually, you're also an hour and 40 minutes away from Clearwater Beach, which
Yeah,
way is so much prettier, we discovered, than Daytona. We love Daytona, but it's
I've been there.
Clearwater is
Yeah.
like white sand. It's gorgeous. So, there's that. And then you've got the Miami area where you go a little higher, you've got Fort Lauderdale, West Palm, all that stuff. It's there's a lot of hubs.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's actually a good point. Because I know that, I mean, it's one thing to look at the median age in your town as opposed to looking at all the surrounding area. Like I get that, yeah.
Yeah.
But um yeah, I mean, things are looking up in that respect though. Like we have a course out. I joined ventured with carnivore coach Peter on a so he's sort of making waves in the sphere now because he's a very new carnivore coach. But we have a course out
Oh,
now. Yeah, like I made like 4 modules. Again, I get them vetted. Like I'm not just like errantly, making videos, but and making claims. But we have a course out to get people certified as carnivore coaches. Like it's a certification course.
I
Bart has
love it.
contributed to the course. Dr. Abs, who you may be familiar with, yeah, he maybe not. He's
Dr. Abs.
Dr. Abs. That's actually, yeah, he's on YouTube. He's got about 100,000 subscribers, mainly from shorts, YouTube shorts. So if you don't watch YouTube shorts, um,
Smart way to go about it. I should
yeah,
do more shorts.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, the goal is to provide more and more services for people so that they can, they have the power in their hands to interpret the stuff and, can make their own decisions and informed decisions on how they should live, diet and lifestyle wise. So sorry for the length on that. That is basically every single detail covered, I think. So that is
Fantastic. Hey,
where,
I have all day long. I'm good. I also make my own schedule, just like you, just because I hate being told when to show up for things. I've always been
uh
an
it's
inner
like, it's
rebel.
like,
It's more like,
it's like whenever you're like a kid and you want to do the dishes, you want to do things for your mom, and then your mom tells you to do the dishes before you get to them, and then you don't want to do it anymore. It's like when you're told to do it, you don't want to do it anymore. And it's
yes,
like yeah, it's way, and there's more
yes,
pressure on you, and it's just this feedback loop where it makes you want to do it even less because there's pressure. Like, yeah,
true. And then once you have that taste of freedom, you'll never go back. So you were kind of
yeah.
forced into it. I guess maybe I was forced into it on subconscious level or whatever. The point is, it's your time. I know that you have to go, but I'm good and I can fit you in whenever you want. Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, we should have another conversation. One of my goals for the channel this year is to have more interviews on my channel, to spice things up. So I would like to have you on my channel because I want more people to actually know, you know, who are the people that are the most trustworthy? Like and also just to give some more resources, like in terms of how to like who to ask certain questions to. So
Love
yeah,
it.
that
Yeah,
sounds good.
totally.
But yeah, I'm out of time now, but thanks for having me on. I'm glad that you gave me the opportunity. Again,
This was
surreal,
fantastic.
surreal talking to you after I've watched you, like I've watched you for a long time, actually. So
That is so awesome.
yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I'm just doing things and I put them on the internet. And you don't think of who's watching. So this is
Yeah.
also fantastic. Like just this moment, like, wow, it made an impact and that makes me
Mhm.
so happy. So Thank you for that. Thank you for showing up and sharing your message. Thank you for taking the courage to go against the grain. And it
Hmm.
takes courage, really, to try things. So you got to have a little bit of kind of leap of faith there. So, like, let me see what happens if I do this.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I'm sure you've inspired so many people. I'm sure a lot of people are going to benefit from watching this. People who may be in your case where you were just a few years ago, not having anything to do because they can't move their body, and this is all they have just watching this. So I hope it sparks something in them to take matters into their own hands. No matter how hard it is, you can still take responsibility because nobody else
Hmm.
is going to do that for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you, Edward. Sorry for keeping you, and
You're good.
I'm gonna post all your links in the description box below, and the link to your YouTube channel. I'll find it, I'm sure, and make sure people also go and check you out. And is there any last minute thing you want to say?
No, you allowed me to have all the time I needed to get everything out. So, yeah, that's
Awesome.
everything. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Edward. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us till the end. If you enjoy this kind of content, make sure you let us know by giving it a thumbs up, subscribing, and hitting that little notification bell icon so YouTube alerts you every time I post a new video. And also, if you know somebody who might benefit from it, make sure you share this video with them. It can truly transform their lives. So thank you, everyone, and until the next one. And if you are looking for more individualized support and coaching, you can check out my coaching packages at drsarahzaldivar.com/coaching, especially the premium and the bundle packages. They both come with unlimited email support. And so the more complex a case is, the more helpful it is to have that unlimited email support. So just keep that in mind. And also for my guides, you can check out my website, drsarahzaldivar.com/shop. This is where you will find guides such as Dopamine Brain, which will show you how you can increase your baseline dopamine levels using a specific brain rehab protocol that relies heavily on a specific exercise protocol. Also, another guide, Monster Mindset, shows you how you can raise baseline dopamine levels by 65% in a single session using visualization techniques that I have introduced called energy versus training visualizations. This is for the people who truly cannot move their bodies just yet. If you are going through extreme pain and you don't have enough healing done yet, I believe Monster Mindset might be the best way to raise that baseline dopamine and allow the healing using the power of the brain. And then from there, hopefully, we can graduate and utilize the full body. And I will send you also a free copy of my 30-day carnivore diet challenge guide if you sign up to my newsletter within 24 hours of this YouTube video going live. The link to sign up is in the description box below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.